We live in a very strange corner of the internet here, filled with some very strange people who have some very strange customs. Customs that deviate quite a bit from mainstream offline culture. Calling someone a faggot is a term of endearment. Calling someone a cunt, renowned as being the one word you can't say on television, and it's water off the duck's back. If you really want to insult someone here, pretty much the worst thing you can call them is a leftist, a socialist, a Marxist, or a communist. And you know, I'm no fan of communism myself, but I do find it quite strange that this ham-fisted reference to a failed economic system, dreamed up by a couple of German guys almost 2 centuries ago at the cusp of the Industrial Revolution, is literally the worst insult that can be dredged up in this most dark corner of the internet. Now, personally, what I find most fascinating is that just like the archetypical Americhristian family values politician who, surprise, turns out to be a closeted self-hating gay, it is usually the hardline traditional conservatives who are the loudest opponents against Marxism and communism, and yet these people love, I mean absolutely fucking love the idea of wealth redistribution as long as it's happening between people who are wearing wedding rings. Fundamentally, at its core precept, traditional marriage is effectively communism for two, where the wealth of the hardworking husband is systematically and institutionally redistributed to his lazy, freeloading wife. Consider that despite the so-called gender pay gap we keep hearing about from feminists, where women supposedly earn 77 cents on the dollar compared with men, we see those very same political feminist lobby organisations, seemingly unaware of the contradiction, bloviating about the fact that women are the most important customers in the modern marketplace because they control 85% of all consumer spending. Stop and think about that for a second. According to the feminists themselves, women only earn 77 cents to the male dollar, but somehow control 85% of all consumer spending. How can that possibly be? Running those numbers to compare the gender ratio of money earned versus money spent, it means that almost half of what women are spending is money that they did not earn themselves. Men are the ones doing all the hard work, and the wealth that they create is then being systematically redistributed to women who then get to spend that wealth. Oh, how patriarchally oppressive.
Ok. Para todos aquellos que no hayan entendido una mierda de lo que está hablando Coltain, le está tirando bastante duro, por ejemplo, a toda la gente que se llama tradicionalista o de derecha, porque esto es algo bastante chistoso, ¿no? Y por eso lo estoy trayendo aquí a este foro. ¿Qué está sucediendo? Lo que está hablando aquí Coltain es de que en este momento hablar de comunismo, hablar de marxismo, hablar de feminismo, hablar de la izquierda, hablar de la cuarta transformación, por ejemplo, en mi país, es, o sea, Cairo, no sé cómo le dicen en España, de manera peyorativa, a estos zurditos, a la gente de izquierda, no recuerdo cómo se les llama. Total, a todos los pinches comunistas, socialistas, socialdemócratas, como sea, toda esta gente, ¿no? Los que más los odian, así, pero así vehementemente, son la gente de derecha, ¿sí? O sea, ya se ha vuelto un pinche insulto. Acá en México los chairos, así como dicen por acá. Bueno, ¿y ahora qué está sucediendo? Pero acá, paradójicamente, o sea, lo que no les gusta es la forma en que se redistribuye la riqueza, ¿no? Que es exactamente lo que es el comunismo. Le quita a todos y la distribuye como le da su p***, ¿no? O sea, todos acá de la... Como sea, no voy a entrar ahorita en ese tema. La cuestión es que lo odian así vehementemente el comunismo, pero por otro lado, no odian el comunismo dentro de la institución del matrimonio, que es que digamos que es la forma en la cual se redistribuye la riqueza dentro de... Pues sí, dentro del matrimonio. El matrimonio es la forma en la cual se redistribuye la riqueza dentro de las parejas, ¿sí? O sea, es una forma de comunismo. ¿Por qué? Y aquí lo está citando Coltain. O sea, por un lado están todas estas pinches quejas de todo el público feminista acerca de la brecha salarial, salarial de género, ¿sí? De que las mujeres solamente ganan 77 centavos por cada dólar que deberían de pagársele, ¿no? Pero por otro lado, las mismas feministas indican que las mujeres son muy importantes porque las mujeres hacen o representan el 85% de todas las decisiones de compra o de los bienes de consumo. Entonces, como alguien que gana solamente 77 centavos de cada dólar, se gasta 85 centavos de cada dólar. Pues lo dice, aquí lo dice, y esto yo también lo he dicho, que el matrimonio se ha vuelto una forma de redistribución de la riqueza. Y es exactamente por eso que se me hace tan interesante que este pensamiento que yo había dicho anteriormente ya está plasmado magistralmente por un video de Colton. Entonces, eso significa que, tal y cual como lo muestra la gráfica, las mujeres, la única manera en que eso se pueda dar, que las mujeres estén gastando dinero que no es de ellas o que no están ganando ellas. Lo cual, pues significa que los hombres solamente están ejerciendo el 15%. O sea, hay ese faltante, las mujeres, es el faltante que vemos en esta parte, es exactamente lo que están gastando, ¿no? A costa de los varones. Básicamente es lo que es este video en este momento. Vamos a continuar.
To me, really is one of the greatest ironies about this so-called manosphere, with all of its traditionalist MRA types running around like Henny Penny, bemoaning the government and the family court system. There seems to be an ever-present tension in the air about the terrifying possibility that their supposedly loyal and loving quote-unquote partners could pull the trigger and unexpectedly divorce rape them at any moment. Personally, if it were me, I'd be a lot more worried about the fucking nightmare scenario where this lazy freeloader actually stays married to you. I mean, really, you're worried about divorce rape? Why? She's already taking more than half of your shit now, and you still don't get to see your kids because you're too busy working overtime to support another fully grown adult who's too lazy to get off her own fat ass and find a job. Don't believe me? Just take a look at the litany of articles bellyaching about the fact that women are financially worse off than men post-divorce.
Para todos aquellos que no hayan entendido, lo que está diciendo en este momento es que en el mundo anglosajón, sobre todo en los Estados Unidos, hay un montón de varones, los tradcons o tradcocks, que están más pinche preocupados por el hecho de que se divorcien de ellos y que les quiten la mitad de sus bienes, cuando ya casados les están quitando la mitad de sus bienes. O sea, se están gastando el 85% según las estadísticas de lo que están ganando. Así es, así es. Entonces, ¿cómo? Dice, además que tampoco estás viendo a tus hijos. ¿Sabes por qué? Porque estás demasiado ocupado trabajando como para verlos y convivir con ellos. ¿Cuál es la pinche diferencia? Digo, yo entiendo pues que todavía hay más agravantes y que ya se hace prácticamente imposible, sobre todo en los Estados Unidos, que puedan sobrevivir, eso dependiendo de cómo sea, pero de todas maneras, estando casados ya estabas igual de jodido o más. ¿Por qué? Porque inclusive, y es lo que está mostrando en pantalla, en este momento hay más mujeres que están peor económicamente después que se divorciaron que cuando estaban casadas. O sea, les han prometido que iban a estar mejor. O sea, la única diferencia con esto... Sí, por acá exactamente lo que dicen. Hipotético. Siempre es más que eso. O sea, de todas maneras. Total. Continuamos.
Yes, she is taking your hard-earned money in the divorce, and that's a real fucking shame. However, the numbers show that it's frankly nowhere near as much as she was taking while she was still married to you. But I digress. Equally fascinating to the economic numbers themselves are the flimsy excuses that these traditionalists make to themselves and others, trying to justify and rationalise away the inherent problems with this blatant socialist welfare sham that they call a marriage. Much like the aforementioned contradiction of the closeted gay family values politician, the rationalization hamster of traditionalist family economics is equally fascinating when you consider the lengths they go to trying to shame and lambast other people outside of a marriage contract for engaging in the identical economic freeloading behaviour that their perfect little stay-at-home goddesses are engaged in. Take for instance the case of the single welfare mother, hated scourge of right-wing traditional conservatives everywhere. Whenever I talk about this topic, I often see comments claiming that the problem isn't stay-at-home mothers, it's single mothers. And I have to ask, on what distinction can you possibly make that claim? No, really. As grown adults who can and will be measured by their own individual merits, or in this case lack thereof, exactly how do these two individuals actually differ? Because if we are talking in terms of quote-unquote career choice, then both of these women appear to have chosen the exact same pathway through life to ensure that there is a roof over their head and food on their table. Yes, this is so obvious that it shouldn't even need to be pointed out, but when you get down to the nuts and bolts of the issue, the business models of single motherhood and stay-at-home motherhood are functionally identical. Make babies, make money. Both of these women just spat a few kids out of their vaginas, and now these kids represent both of these women's proverbial free meal tickets. Let's not sugarcoat this. As individual adults who can be objectively judged on their own merits and achievements in life, both of these women are useless, lazy, freeloading pieces of shit who have contributed equal amounts of sweet fuck all back to the economy, society, and human progress beyond the base biological process of simply creating a few more useless mouths to feed. The single welfare mother gets a bad rap, and justifiably so, but when you really stop and think about it, the stay-at-home wife is no better. Both of these women ultimately amount to nothing but lazy, freeloading welfare scum. The only significant difference between a single mother living in the ghetto and a traditional stay-at-home wife living in the suburbs is where her welfare check comes from. I mean, that really is the totality of both of these women's economic situations, career choices and achievements in life. Traditionalist mother, welfare mother, same fucking shit. Make babies, make money. Now, some of the criticisms I get when I discuss this topic are straight up fucking baffling to me. Like, Coltrane doesn't understand that children require care. Even though I literally spoke at length about the objective income and free time benefits of shared parenting in the very video they're complaining about. I have never once said or even implied that children don't require care or parenting. I guess we could argue about the minutiae of that parenting, you know, the exact amount of care required, to what age and by who, especially considering modern advances like washing machines, disposable diapers and baby formula, social changes like the availability of public education, as well as the fact that Western families today typically only have 2 or 3 kids as opposed to the 7 or 8 they used to have. All things considered, you know, based on the actual facts, parenting has frankly transformed into a pretty fucking light duty over the last 100 years. But that's really a topic for another video, and frankly a topic that I have already covered ad nauseum. The reason I bring this up here is that getting past the minutiae of parenting to the core topic of economic dependency, I personally find it rather distasteful in and of itself the way these traditionalists resort to using their own children as ideological meat shields to justify and excuse away any and all shitty behaviour displayed by their adult wives. Using your children as an excuse to abdicate the economic responsibilities of another fully grown adult is frankly fucking disgusting to me. Yeah, for all of their moralising about sacred family bonds, whenever they get into an online argument, there they go waving their children around as nothing more than free meal tickets, which somehow justifies the buffet of unilateral mass economic parasitism that we see their adult wives engaging in. So let me set the record straight here. Despite some spectacular retards doing a fairly woeful job of trying to strawman my position, I am fully aware that children require a degree of care, and said as much in the very videos they pretend to debunk. Yes, children are dependents. I have never said otherwise. However, it does not logically follow that because that child is a dependent and that child came out of a specific vagina, then the adult owner of that vagina should therefore be entitled to complete lifelong economic dependency herself. Oh, won't somebody please think of the children is not a valid argument to justify this kind of adult freeloading. And the traditionalists fucking know it. They know it because, as I have already pointed out, these same traditionalists are very quick to call bullshit on the exact same economic freeloading behaviour when they see single welfare mothers engaging in it. But if we are being honest, if we are being really honest, there is no fucking difference at all. If we take this rough economic diagram of the traditional nuclear family complete with breadwinner husband, and we keep all of the other variables exactly the same but replace the husband with the government, from the perspective of the woman and her brood, nothing has functionally changed. She is quite literally in the exact same economically dependent situation with the exact same ideological justification underpinning it. Yes, won't somebody please think of the poor children? The fact is that on a very fundamental level, this traditionalist excuse to justify the existence of stay-at-home mothers is the exact same reasoning behind left-wing political support for the government-funded women, infant, children programs that these very same traditionalists claim to fucking hate so much.
Si disfrutas del video hasta ahora, este es el momento perfecto para dar like y dejar un comentario sobre el tema, ya que esto ayuda a que crezca el canal con el algoritmo de YouTube. De antemano, gracias. Continuamos.
Ok, hasta aquí. La gente que no haya entendido de qué chingado está hablando Coltain, básicamente es lo siguiente. Está haciendo un paralelismo entre la dependencia económica que tienen las madres solteras con el gobierno contra la dependencia económica que tienen las ¿cómo se llama? Las esposas, las amas de casa contra su marido. La única diferencia que existe es de quién viene el dinero. O sea, las madres solteras, digo, obviamente este es un modelo que está basado en Estados Unidos, pero siempre, no sé si siempre, pero cuando menos. Yo sé que, por ejemplo, aquí en México existe ayuda para madres solteras y cada pinche vez que hay un nuevo gobierno, elecciones o lo que sea, y vamos a aumentar las ayudas sociales a las madres, a las jefas de familia, madres solteras. Porque las jefas de familia, madres solteras, son importantes para la sociedad porque sus pinches decisiones fueron equivocadas y no deberíamos nosotros de pagar con nuestros impuestos su pinche irresponsabilidad. No, porque votan y además sus hijos también van a votar en el futuro y quiero que se acuerden que vivieron de mí, entonces quiero que sean clientes de mi partido a futuro. Bueno, como sea. A pesar de que no les ajuste para vivir, cuando menos aquí en Latinoamérica, de todas formas nos siguen costando. Entonces, viendo objetivamente cómo está la cuestión. Y esto en una sociedad de la igualdad, o sea, en una sociedad donde hombres y mujeres tenemos que, digamos, contribuir 50 y 50% a nuestro proyecto de familia. Las mujeres que deciden ser amas de casa, pues están prácticamente en la misma posición en la cual se encuentran las mujeres que son madres solteras dependientes de los cheques del gobierno. La única diferencia es quién las está financiando. ¿Un particular o un ente estatal o un ente público? ¿Sí? Entonces, piensen en los niños. ¿Cuál? ¿En mis hijos o en el niño con tetas y vagina? ¿Sí? Entonces, en este mundo, ella tendrá que trabajar, aportar el 50%, tener un trabajo igual o muy similar o de muy similar ingreso al que tiene el varón normalmente, y ambos tendrían que turnarse para los dos atender a los hijos. Eso es lo justo y igualitario, pero dinámica sexual, maldita realidad. Entonces aquí pues estos pinches tradicionalistas vayan al ver ese tipo de cosas. De que, ok, si tú te vas a quedar, además, están mencionando todo, ¿no? Están mencionando la existencia de las escuelas públicas, de las guarderías y todo este tipo de cosas. Digo, yo no estoy en contra de que existan las amas de casa, pero bajo ciertas circunstancias. Hoy en día, pues, digamos que es bastante difícil. Porque dice Ferféles, ¿independientes dónde? Siguen siendo dependientes. Exactamente. Manera directa o indirecta. Continuamos.
The underlying ideology of both sides of the political spectrum is functionally identical. A lot of superficial disagreement and hyperbole plays out in the media, but the underlying position of both the political left and the political right is fundamentally the same. That is, because these women popped out a couple of kids, they are apparently now both entitled to an economic free ride for life. Left-wing social welfare, right-wing traditionalism, it is functionally the same shit as far as the female recipient of this free money is concerned. Make babies, make money. Once you can get past the superficial moral indignation of both sides, that is ultimately the shared business model of motherhood that both sides ultimately strive towards. As you would expect, this blatant hypocritical doublethink represents something of a dilemma for the traditionalist moral framework. Frankly, I find it hilarious watching the desperate lengths that these people will go to trying to distinguish and distance the evil single mother from their own stay-at-home paragons of virtue. They make all kinds of claims about stable home lives, family cohesion, and the importance of raising children. I've even seen some of these poor brainwashed cucks argue that the emotional state of simply loving your family is somehow comparable to the act of working 51 hours a week to actually support your family in a real, tangible way. Are you fucking kidding me, guy? The rationalization hamster of
Ok, no sé si alguien entendió lo que está diciendo ahí. Básicamente hay gente en los comentarios que le dice que amar a tu familia tiempo completo, o sea, estás refiriendo a que tu esposa sea ama de casa, amando a su familia, a sus niños, todos los días, que ese sea su trabajo tiempo completo, es equivalente al esfuerzo que él hace. O sea, trabajar 50, 60, 70 horas a la semana es comparable a amar a tu familia. La cantidad de esfuerzo que se requiere para hacer esas cosas es equivalente. ¿Eres imbécil? Obviamente sí. Bueno, aquí voy a hacer un pequeño paréntesis porque la dinámica sexual, volvemos a lo mismo. Los hombres tenemos que sacrificarnos así porque estamos hechos para eso. Las mujeres son unas reinas, ¿por qué? Porque tienen valor intrínseco. Nosotros no. Una vez que los hombres hacen uso de ese valor, estamos completamente jodidos.
Latin, y aún así quieren que las paguen por hacer, o sea, lo que se les corresponde por su biología.
Ah, y además, además hay que pagarles, ¿Qué tal de car?
Todo bien, estoy de vuelta.
No es
un ratico nada más porque...
Sí, ¿no es extremadamente tarde en España ya?
Sí, pero bueno, es sábado noche, bueno, ya domingo mañana más bien, pero da igual.
Bueno, continuamos. ¿Alguien quiere hacer alguna anotación en lo que resta de video? Me pueden decir.
Traditionalist values trying to find a non-existent difference between these two women is as hilarious as it is absolute crap. To start with, one of the worst kept secrets amongst the traditionalist clique is the fact that their precious stay-at-home mothers are actually horrendous fucking drug fiends. In the 60s and 70s, Valium pills were literally nicknamed mother's little helpers. Through the 80s and 90s, stay-at-home mummy's drug of choice was Prozac, and today the popular pathway to getting shit-faced is dexamphetamines. Good, traditionalist women who spend their days high as fuck by stealing their children's Ritalin and Adderall prescriptions. And then there is the minor issue of fidelity. It is quite difficult to get a good, reliable statistic on the amount of cheating that actually goes on within society. Cheating is not something that people typically want to admit to, even in anonymous surveys. Nonetheless, some self-reporting surveys arrive at numbers as high as 1 in 5, which would make your odds of actually landing a faithful partner statistically worse than your odds playing Russian roulette. Now, if I had to make an educated guess, I'd say that the combination of boredom, loneliness, and, dare I say, contempt for an absent, bill-paying husband who's never home would lead to the rates of infidelity being much higher amongst the sorority of stay-at-home mothers. Knowing all of this, I can't help but chuckle when I see naive young traditionalists trying to sell the ideal that traditional marriage is the most efficient way to have children. Let me tell you, as a guy who's fucked a few bored housewives in his time, I really don't think that efficient procreation is necessarily a great life goal for the self-aware man to have. But hey, that's just my opinion. Fucking go for it if that's what you really want. No, I'm sure you'll be perfectly happy with that arrangement, as long as you're okay with the reality that while you're off at work breaking your back to pay the bills, your wife will be on her back with a veritable freeway of Chad running between her legs. The very idea that traditional stay-at-home mothers are virtuous angels of purity, somehow above the unscrupulous, whorish, drug addict behaviour of single welfare mothers, is a false assumption. The only significant difference between the jobless single mother crack whore living in the ghetto and the jobless stay-at-home Adderall-addicted cheater who lives in the suburbs is that one gets her welfare check from the government and the other gets her welfare check from the husband. The traditionalist position of anti-Marxism but pro-stay-at-home motherhood is straight-up contradictory doublethink. Make no mistake, at the end of the day, wealth redistribution and economic socialism to support jobless, drug-fucked losers is exactly what these traditionalists are engaged in. It is the same old welfare state, the individual married man is just doing it on a much smaller scale than the federal government. In fact, it's fucking amazing to me how many of these traditionalists just love to use the metaphor that modern Western women are effectively marrying the government without realizing the blatantly obvious corollary to that metaphor. If women can have their needs sufficiently met by quote-unquote marrying the government, then ipso facto, traditionally married men are ultimately little more than competing socialist welfare providers. As I said, the business models of single mothers and traditional mothers are fundamentally the same. Make babies, make money. You honestly think she gives a single shit about your sacred traditional vows? Wake up. To her, the marriage contract is nothing but business and the bottom line. Government welfare, marital welfare, it really doesn't matter. To the freeloading adult woman living in this situation, the only functional difference, and ultimately her only concern, is where her free money is coming from. And unsurprisingly, widespread social trends perfectly confirm this. As rental prices rise, women stay in bad relationships to survive. Oh, the poor darlings. There is no great feminist conspiracy to be found here. There's nothing more that needs to be interpreted into the subtext of this headline. It's all right there in plain English. A woman's level of commitment to the relationship is directly proportional to the free money that she is receiving. And if that welfare stream ever stops, she simply hits the eject button and finds a new social welfare provider. Unemployment can spell divorce for men, but not women. Well, gee, colour me fucking surprised. I'm sorry if any of you find these facts upsetting, but welcome to reality, gentlemen. To a woman, the marital contract is exactly that. A contract. Your traditional wedding vows are essentially just end-user terms of service. As a traditional husband, you are ultimately nothing more than a welfare service provider. And if that welfare stream ever stops, in the eyes of the woman, your contract is considered null and void. You will be replaced just as easily as her car insurance provider. At this point, I have heard every flavour of cockamamie rationalisation and flimsy excuse trying to justify the existence of the stay-at-home wife. When you finally get past all of those rationalisations and excuses, I think a big part of the problem simply comes down to sex. The desperation of thirsty men. I suspect that somewhere deep within the warped mind of the traditionalist man, the only real distinguishing feature between the single welfare mother he claims to hate so much and his own traditional stay-at-home wife that he vigorously defends is simply the fact that he occasionally gets to fuck one of them. From a wider objective perspective, there is really no tangible difference between these two women per se. They are both jobless, junky parasites who have scored an economic free ride by simply popping out a few kids. But to the individual traditionalist man in a marriage, pussy is evidently a powerful motivator that encourages otherwise sensible men to ignore red flags, make bad judgments, and hold some truly ridiculous double standards. Just like Romeo drinking poison after knowing Juliet for only 3 days, the story of modern traditionalism is really just the age-old fable of a confused man unable to distinguish between the allure of sex and an otherwise shit economic deal that he politically rails against whenever he recognises other people engaging in the exact same thing. In fact, some of these poor chumps have become so deluded by the traditionalist ideological mindset that according to them it is now quote-unquote entitled communist garbage to expect a grown adult will get off their ass, get a job and support themselves instead of leeching off the hard work of others. Yeah, let me repeat that. Getting a job and working to support yourself is literally considered entitled communist garbage in the eyes of these retards. That is how deluded and disconnected from reality the traditionalist man has become in our modern age. This is the bottom line on the modern traditionalist man. He will hate on single welfare mothers for enjoying the exact same economically carefree lifestyle that his own stay-at-home wife enjoys. It really is the exact same economic situation, but because his own fat aging wife will occasionally spread her cankled legs for him, he will happily invent all manner of rationalizations and moral exceptions to overlook her own blatant socialist freeloading. That is the total breadth and depth of the traditionalist man's moral framework. All you have to do is dangle a little bit of pussy in front of him and all of his high-minded rantings and ravings about leftist social Marxism goes straight out the window in favour of domestic wealth redistribution and matrimonial communism for two.
Mucho más contenido y sobre todo sin censura en plataformas alternativas, todas ellas en la pantalla final del vídeo. Hasta pronto.